Joining us in the studio this morning is FCPA John Lolkoloi, who is the Director Ethics and Leadership at the EACC. Good morning.
Good morning, Do.
How are you doing?
Doing fine.
Karibu sana.
Thank you.
You rose from a storm that came, and many things are happening at the EACC. And when we're looking today at enhancing the integrity of academic professional qualifications in Kenya, there are questions that have arisen, especially around election time. How does the EACC guarantee that folks who tell us that they have a master's and 2 doctorates, that they actually have them and went to schools? But beyond that, the integrity question that lies beneath, how are we actually ensuring that? And so those are some of the conversations that we will have this morning. But even as we get into things, Lolkoloi, we normally would welcome you to the studio or to the show today with a proverb. We go around the African continent every week, and this week we've landed in Mozambique. And we would like to get your interpretation of this proverb, right? And it goes like this. There is no elephant that complains about the weight of its tusks.
There is no elephant that complains about
the weight
of its tusks. My interpretation of that is that, of course, from the literal meaning, we know that the elephant is big, has a big tusk. But when you look at the literal meaning, the inside meaning, it means that whatever situations, whatever challenges, people go through challenges, they go through obstacles, and sometimes because of resilience that they build, they are able to withstand and they are able to walk around them without showing any complaint or showing any bitterness. Yeah, so it's about resilience. It's about adapting to the challenges that you have. Yeah.
Indeed. I love it. So even if somebody sees it could be very heavy, you know how you're, navigating through this life.
Yes.
Indeed. As we jump into conversations this hour, yesterday morning, we woke up in the morning and soon after that, we heard a fracas that was taking place to the west of us. And then after that, we saw that the Nzoia governor had been arrested, but these were on orders by the EACC. And many questions arose in terms of what happened. Is this an active investigation? And upon what grounds then was he being sought? Because the melee that took place as a result of that order of arrest then was unfortunate. However, we just wanted to get some insights in terms of what happens when we're chasing this integrity question and indeed the fight against corruption.
Thank you, Ndu. So on the issue of Nzoia governor, this was an ordinary investigation that the commission was undertaking. And I want to state that EACC is an independent commission. We do our work in accordance with the law and pursuant to complaints that we receive as a commission, and those are that is the mandate that has been given to us. So these were investigations that were ongoing. There were allegations of procurement irregularities, conflict of interest, and pursuant to its mandate, the commission undertook that search operation in Kitale and in Nairobi. And I want to state that as EACC, we follow the law because before we even conduct a search on anybody's residence or offices, we obtain a warrant from the court. So we have to go before a magistrate and present a case that we are conducting an official investigation and we need to get evidence from certain sources, and it's on the basis of that satisfying the magistrate that we get the orders. So let me at the onset condemn what happened in Nzoia in Kitale. Our officers were attacked. The vehicles were damaged, commissioned vehicles, which are basically government vehicles, that is malicious damage to property. And this is even with the officers having shown that they had warrants to conduct this search. So we want to appeal to all Kenyans, including the leaders. Let us be subject to the law. Let us rein on our supporters because we do not want to live in a country of lawlessness. EACC has been constituted to conduct such work, and we were doing it pursuant to our mandate. And therefore, even for the young people, or whoever was mobilized to go and attack the officers and vandalize the vehicles. Of course, they will face the law, but we want to urge them to resist. And we also want to ask the leaders to be responsible and to be subject to the law.
How does the EACC arrive at a case that will then be followed up in the manner that we saw yesterday? You talk about, allegations made, collecting of evidence, and people coming out to say, there may be 1, 2, 3 discrepancies. How then does the EACC say, okay, this is one that we will actually follow? There is a large or significant enough bundle of evidence that we can now employ. How?
Thank you. That's a very, very good question, and it will actually inform the general public that the investigations done by EACC are documents-based. So we get an allegation, like I've mentioned, about procurement irregularities and conflict of interest. So what we do is we collect the documents, we analyze those documents, we interview people, record their statements, and be able to arrive at findings. And it's good for Kenyans to know, even as they try to probably imply that EACC is being used. EACC is not the final organization in investigations. We collect that the documents, we analyze them, make our reports, and forward them to DPP, the Director of Public Prosecutions, who conducts an independent review to find out whether there is sufficient evidence to support the recommendations that have been made, whether to charge or not. And it's even after that the case will go to court, to an impartial court that will also interrogate that evidence, listen to the witnesses. So this is a very, very methodical process. It is very analytical, and it's not one organization. It's just that we are at the start. Yes.
Okay. Is it when you go for an arrest, in this case, so it's not just an arrest, but there's also investigations, collection of such evidence,
yes,
that the EACC may have been made aware that there is something to be collected within premises?
Yes.
Is it necessary to then be accompanied by the heavily armed security personnel that we saw in Kitale yesterday? Is it necessary?
Yes, it is necessary.
Why?
You can imagine what would have happened. Of course, you see still something bad happened because our officers were attacked, the vehicles were vandalized. You can imagine if they had just gone alone, what could have happened. So basically, when we have those security accompany the officers, it's just for purposes of ensuring their security. It's not to intimidate anybody, but it's just to ensure that operation is done in a secure manner. It has been done before, and what we are seeing is just leaders trying to incite their followers. They do not want to be held accountable. You do not prove your innocence by mobilizing people to come and attack officers and vandalize government vehicles. What you do is you wait for investigations to be completed, wait for the recommendations, and if their recommendations have been made to charge you, you can go and prove your innocence in court.
Okay, just briefly, because I know this is a matter that will go before the corridors of justice and sub judice will apply and all that. But my question would be based on the optics, because with such a politically heated arrest of someone, we have to bear in mind the pros and cons that might come with such a move. Of course, your duty is to investigate and to, do that part. But what's the modus operandi when it comes to such high-profile cases? Because at times we see some politicians are summoned to appear at EACC. So was this particular governor summoned or arrested?
So this governor was actually arrested, and there was a search. There was a search that was done at his residence, and sometimes it's on a case-by-case basis. We do our analysis, and I can tell you for sure, I have been in this field for over 20 years, and when we do our assessments, there are people that when you call them, they can come. Then there are others that do not come. So on a case-to-case basis, we assess the situation. And then in this particular case for the searches...
Had you called this governor?
He hadn't been called.
Oh, okay.
He hadn't been called, but warrants were obtained to search his residence because it was necessary to secure evidence that was in his residence. But because you've also mentioned the issue about politics, for us the issue of politics does not arise. Because if you look at the law that we enforce, there is no provision that talks about politics. It just talks about an offense. Like, for example, it would say if you willfully fail to follow procurement regulations, or if you fraudulently acquire public property. And you see, these complaints are also coming from the citizens. So it's our duty. That is what we have been constituted to do, that we have to pursue them to their logical conclusions. Yes.
Because of the fact that the principle matters here, whether we are talking about certification, which we'll go into in just a little bit, or whether we are talking about the process under which some of these things happen, it's important for us to then open it up a little bit, because you get an example like this and then it allows people to understand the process. Normally we attack things that we don't understand.
Correct.
Or for which they are not very clear.
Yeah.
And that's why we ask some of these questions, because some of those things do not appear clear.
Yes.
And so we will apply aggression when we do not understand.
True.
Now, the EACC being a public, although independent commission, does a lot of its activities in the glare of public eye and attention, such as what we saw happened yesterday. However, there have been also a number of cases whereby, because of later on in the case lack of evidence, some of these have been pulled. And sadly, the optics play a major role here. That how it looks, how it is perceived, then plays very heavily on how it will be accepted or rejected. Now, when we see something like this play out and we talk about the fact that certain political statements were made previously, and then we see this manner of engagement that took place yesterday, how do we separate the EACC and its mandate to fulfill a certain role from the politics? Now, note, I'm not saying that the two are connected. I'm asking, how do we separate it with the perception that is hitting us in the face?
So one, for us, what we noticed, this could just have been a coincidence that certain statements were made, and this investigation did not start immediately. Those statements were made.
They were on before. Were they ongoing?
They were ongoing.
Okay.
Now, the way we can separate these issues is that we are guided by professionalism and integrity in the course of our work, because we know for sure that the evidence we collect has to go to another agency, the Director of Public Prosecutions, who are not part of EACC. They are also an independent body who will look at that evidence, and if, for example, they find that there is no sufficient evidence to warrant any further action, they will return the file, as they do in some cases, probably where they think it is not sufficient. So for us, we follow the professionalism and integrity, knowing that there are also other checks and balances, and we have a commission that is, staffed with professionals of high caliber, competence, lawyers, accountants, valuers, and therefore, and we also have an oversight body in the commission. We have the commissioners, we have the top management, who will have to look at that evidence which has been collected, and therefore we are bound by professionalism and competence and the duty to serve. Because we, at the end of the day, all that we do will be subjected to public scrutiny in terms of evidence.
So is that process efficient from your point of view as we conclude on this matter? Because EACC has been advocating for prosecutorial powers for quite some time now, because you're aiming to streamline the fight against corruption and improve efficiency. So as things stand, in light of what Ndu mentioned in terms of some of these high-profile cases collapsing in court due to perhaps weak prosecution and whatnot, is it efficient as things stand?
It's efficient, but there is room for improvement, and I agree with you that there are instances that EACC has been advocating for prosecution powers or some delegated prosecution powers, so that we could take some cases, DPP take some cases, and the understanding has been, if we were to take some of the cases that we have investigated, DPP having given evidence, then there is likely to be more efficiency, because these cases will be prosecuted by people who have also investigated them and have understood them, and therefore it has been an issue of delegated prosecutorial powers so that we improve service delivery for Kenyans overall.
Okay.
Yes.
This is a public question. It comes from members of the public and it's wrapped up in different colors every day, but it's the same question. That would we see arrests or investigations done for those who are aligned to or are in the government of the day?
So for us, and it's very, very important that I make it clear that the basis of our investigations are not whether you are aligned to government or not. The basis of our investigations are on the basis is on the reports that have been received, investigations that have been conducted, and what those investigations have established, that there is a case to warrant those cases being taken to the next phase.
So there is no shyness when it comes. There is no apprehension when it comes that there would be allegations, number one, like you've made admission to. If there are allegations from the public, if there is enough in terms of evidence collected based on those allegations that were made, and it happens to be somebody who is in government today, the EACC today would have no apprehension whatsoever bringing a case against somebody who is, let's just say it, on the right side of the current administration.
We will not have any apprehension at all. And in fact, some of those complaints, we get them from the members of the public. So for us, our duty is to look at the complaints that have been brought up, conduct thorough and professional investigations, analyze, and forward them to the next course of action. So there should be no apprehension at all. We look at evidence, not those perceptions that so and so is affiliated to this faction or this other. Yes.
Are there other? I mean, I'm sure you wouldn't be able to give us the merits of the issues under investigation, which is fine. But are there other notable key individuals who may be under your eye at the moment who are being investigated in the position of governor, for example?
Yes, there are ongoing investigations on several counties. Analysis is being done, and whether it's a governor, whether it's a CEC who is involved, facts are there, they will be forwarded to the Director of Public Prosecutions.
Okay.
Yes.
As we look into leadership and ethics, those are some of the things, I mean, it's front and center of the examples that we see coming out yesterday. One of the matters that rose during the last election, and this was during the election, not after the vote was made, during campaign season, was certification by those who put themselves up for public office. And the questions of whether you went to University XYZ, whether you bought your certificate, whether you actually finished a course, whether your shadow darkened the walls of any lecture hall in any university, and then putting yourself up for leadership has come into question. How does the EACC deal with these matters? And let's do an overview of that.
Thank you. The issue of falsification of academic and professional certificates has grown. It's rampant. And I want to state at the onset that tomorrow, 21st, we have an ethics and integrity conference where we have called various stakeholders to come and discuss this issue. Just to go a bit back, in 2022, the Public Service Commission instructed all public agencies to authenticate certificates of their employees. And in that first batch of authentication, about 2,000 persons were identified to have fake academic and professional certificates. So what we have done as EACC, we have conducted investigations into those allegations because it is an offense to forge academic or professional certificates under the Penal Code. It is also an offense under the Anti-Corruption and Economic Crimes Act to forge and to use those certificates for employment. We have several cases in court. DCI are also handling some other cases. So in addition to investigation and arraigning suspects in court, we are also pursuing the amounts that they have earned as a result of those certificates, the use of those certificates. And the courts have made, clear judgment that employment obtained as a result of forged academic certificate is fraudulent, and all amounts that you've earned from the time you are employed until separation are recoverable. So we have conducted investigation recoveries. We have issued advisories to institutions to ensure they authenticate the certificates. And tomorrow's conference, we are bringing the conversation to the general public, to the stakeholders, so that we can look at it. So it's not only the leaders, it is people across all sectors.
Okay. How long does it take? Because I imagine if Jesse and I went to same university, maybe along the line he would have seen me. I would have walked down a hall somewhere. He would have been somewhere else. We would have seen each other.
Yeah.
But beyond that, if I were to go to one of the universities that I attended today, this morning, and I needed a transcript, it wouldn't take me an hour. I'd have my transcript stamped, authenticated, and I would be done.
Yeah.
They know that I was there because there's a system.
Yeah.
They can look into the system. They can see the grades that I got.
Yeah.
They give me my transcript at the end of the day. Boom, we're done.
Yeah.
Why does it take so long from the EACC to figure out if Jesse went to Elephant Tusk University in Nairobi? Why does it take so long to confirm that?
So before we come to why it takes long for EACC to investigate, let us go to how these people are employed with fake academic certificates. Mm-hmm. And the issue has been organizations are not actually conducting any verification of the people they employ. Mm-hmm. So they advertise positions, people come with copies, they can even come with originals which are actually not authentic. And therefore, that is why you have so many people in public service, probably even in the private sector, with fake academic certificates. Now, let's come to EACC investigations. Investigation is a process that has to go through several methods, because when you conduct these investigations, you have a mind that this is a matter that will eventually land in court. So the issue of getting maybe talking to the registrar and getting that transcript, for us, what you will have to do a letter to them, give them copies that you want authenticated, and then you have to record statements, because those statements will have to, those people who will come and say we have looked at those certificates, genuine or not, will have to come and testify in court. So after writing to those institutions, recording the statements, coming to put up the file together, forwarding it to the DPP for review, and then now after he gives consent, then it goes to court. But I want to assure you and Kenyans that investigations into forged academic and professional certificates are not very complex. They actually don't take long. They are among the cases that we are completing within a very short time, except in situations where individuals may have studied abroad, in which case you have to go through the legal process, the mutual legal assistance, which you have no control.
Okay, let's assume that abroad is Uganda.
Yes.
Abroad is any country that is outside the geographical boundaries of Kenya.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And somebody says they went to university in Uganda.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes. Again,
the process is the same. That let's say we put an official of the EACC on a flight.
Yes.
In 1 hour and 10 minutes, they will be in fact, in 45 to 1 hour, they will be in Entebbe.
Yes.
Let's say that this university is in Kampala.
Yeah.
From Entebbe to Kampala is a 40-minute drive.
Yes.
If there is no traffic, it is about 30 minutes.
Yes.
You are at the university.
Yes.
And you start to ask questions under the auspices that you have the legal requirements to do so as the EACC, having cleared all of that before. This information, you can actually get it in an hour.
We wish it was that simple.
And now my question is, why is it not?
Yes, and that's what I'm going to explain, that you cannot board a plane or a bus to go there. The process of investigation has to be done in accordance with the law. So when you are dealing with a foreign country, it doesn't matter whether it's Uganda or Tanzania, you have to generate what we call mutual legal assistance request, which has to go through the AG. It has to go to the AG of the other country. Then it goes to the other, what we call the competent authority, for them to give that evidence. So it has to go through the process. Otherwise, the evidence you will acquire by boarding a plane will be thrown out by the court, because they will say you did not follow the rule of evidence. You have to generate mutual legal assistance request. It goes through the processes. It goes through the processes in the other country. And once you get the evidence, it has also to come through the same processes.
I'm just looking at some statistics here, and it was They were released last year around February, where there was an audit by the Public Service Commission, and it found that more than 2,000 fake certificates were used to obtain employment from different institutions in the government. So it definitely brings into focus the challenges we're facing when it comes to academic qualifications that have been forged and are not above par. My question would be, what weaknesses are being exploited? What's the verification system as is right now? Because it seems to be flawed. Is there an online database verification for certificates issued by universities, by colleges, especially in the country?
Thank you, Jesse. That is a very, very important question. What has happened is that I think for quite some time, we were really concerned with protecting theft of public funds and other public property, but we were not looking at authenticity of academic and professional certificates. And it's possible that it's something that we never thought was happening. And therefore, there are certain loopholes that, the culprits have been exploiting. And one of them is that where institutions did not have any mechanisms to verify these certificates. They will just maybe rely on what was being submitted. The other loophole that people have been exploiting, I think the fact that there's a lot of unemployment, and this could basically, other than a loophole, maybe it's one of the causes. A lot of unemployment has pushed people to try and use all means possible to get some competitive edge over others. And therefore, what they have been doing is to change the grades. Like, for example, if somebody had a C+ and they wanted to do a certain course that require B, what they will do is they will change those grades from C+ to B, and then they go and do the courses that they required. And therefore, certain universities also are not very keen to ensure that these application documents, what the candidate has presented, is genuine or not. And it's also the same with employment, that probably somebody wanted to get a certain job, but the qualification they have in terms of the degree will not allow them to get that employment. So they will just create their own documents with their own grades. And sadly, we have even had cases of people creating certificates for them to show that they are doctors. They get employed, they run clinics, some of them, going to become engineers, but they basically on dubious and forged academic certificates. So one of the other loopholes has been, you rightly mentioned, there is no database, where even employers could check. Most of the institutions have not digitized their documents so that, you could do a quick check. If somebody said, for example, they have a degree in law or a diploma in law, or they are an engineer, you can go to their website and see. So those are some of the loopholes that people have been exploiting because institutions have not been able to carry out those verifications. Of course, as we engage them, some of them are saying that verification is time-consuming, it is costly. I know, for example, like Kenya National Examination Council charges for you to authenticate certain certificates, and you cannot fault them because that is also an area where they get their source of income. Okay. So there are issues of not having a database, documents are not digitized, and then institutions have not been keen. Yes.
Institutions have not been keen. I like that you ended on that. So let's take one example, one sector, right? Again, going to the elections that took place in 2022. And for any electoral position at a certain level, or if I'm wrong, all levels, need to get a certain clearance by the EACC, do they not? It is one of the things that you must get if you want to present yourself for public office. Now, the EACC, as you've told us, even from the first case that we have looked at, is that you act on allegations, right? Yes. Somebody can come and say, I suspect that this and this has not happened. It cannot just be Ndu rocking up to Integrity Center and saying, well, this person, and then you act on it. No. It would have been a consolidation or a collection of some of these. However, for these cases, if there are allegations or if it is not clear that one person who is running for, I don't know, governor of one county or member of parliament, and that there is a suspicion that their documents are not authentic or that they actually did not go to a university, these individuals are serving in those positions today, cleared by the EACC, and those allegations or those suspicions were present even at the time where they were campaigning for office. They won election, they are serving in those positions, and those allegations were there before, but they were cleared by the EACC. Please explain how that would happen.
So let me explain the clearance process by EACC. And to start with, it's good to appreciate that the law is there both to punish as well as to protect.
Yes.
So when we get those reports, as EACC, we have adopted a policy to abide by the law. And the clearances that we give are actually giving information that is within our custody to respective institutions that employ or to the electoral body. And you do recall that in the last general election, we gave names of 241 individuals. We flagged them. Some were, we used three categories. One is that there is an ongoing investigation. It is at an advanced stage and you are adversely mentioned.
Yes.
We will have to cite you. The next is you have been charged in court. The case is ongoing. We will cite you.
But we don't stop you from running in an election.
That's why I'm heading to.
Okay, let's go.
Then the third one is you have gone through the court process, you have been convicted, but you have appealed the conviction. So the categories we gave were those 241.
Okay.
Now, EACC has no power to bar anybody from running for elections. That is the work of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. So we told them, these 241, and we categorized them that this one is adversely mentioned, this one is facing a criminal case, this one was convicted but appealed the conviction, so for all intent and purposes is still in court. But IEBC, because again of the provisions of the Constitution, if you look at Article 99 of the Constitution and Article 193, which is one of the undoing in promoting ethics and integrity in this country, it says that once you have violated Chapter 6, you can be barred from running. But down there it says, unless you have exhausted all the appeal procedures.
Yeah.
And therefore, that is where there is the problem. And that is what IEBC has been saying, that for us, these people have not exhausted the appeal procedures, and therefore will be in contravention of the Constitution if we bar them. They are likely to go through lawsuits. But again, as we move now to the next side of the equation, which is where we have been pushing the narrative, we have made that list public. We also expect Kenyans that this person who is coming to you to vie for an MCA or a parliamentary position has been cited by EACC. He has a criminal case. Will you, for God's sake, not consider not to elect this person? So unless we amend, probably that Article 99 and 193, those people, IEBC is also not
But
able.
the thing is,
Yes.
I'm going to liken this to a buffet. You have presented the buffet in the open air.
Yes.
It has come from the kitchen.
Yes.
If there was something wrong with that dish, it should have been stopped at the kitchen. You cannot blame the people who come and serve from the buffet when you, the people in the kitchen, have allowed it to come through those doors and be served. So if we now tell the people of Kenya, well, don't vote for this person because they have a questionable character or they have done something questionable, you allowed them through the door. You ticked off and said that you may present yourself. It's already on the buffet.
So
people are serving what you have allowed to come through the kitchen doors.
You are right. If tomorrow or the day after tomorrow, this country gives EACC powers to bar candidates from running, express, we will do that. But unfortunately, the law only allows us to give information within our custody, pass it to the recruiting agency, passes to the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission.
Do we see a proactive move by the EACC realizing that there's a bit of a throttling in the way in which you can do your job because of what the law says? People have been very rigorous and saying, you know what, we want to do this, but the law says we can't do this. And we have seen members of parliament, for example, putting up a bill that says, you know what, we need to expand the powers of the Auditor General.
Yes.
Because they can cite certain queries, but they can't do anything beyond citing the query. We need to expand their powers. Do we see proactivity on the part of the EACC to say, you know what, we see these things, but our hands are tied. Can we expand our powers?
In fact, EACC has not only been proactive, but also very, very innovative. We have generated proposals for legal reforms that have gone to the Attorney General, citing the weaknesses in the laws where we feel that we are hampered. You will know, for example, that we have been very active in making proposals for the conflict of interest bill. You will know that, for example, we have made contributions to the miscellaneous amendments, some I think which are currently before the Attorney General. So because the fight against corruption and unethical conduct is our core business, we do it on day-to-day basis. We keep on analyzing the challenges and coming up with proactive proposals to help address. And we do it through the Justice Legal Affairs Committee of Parliament, and then now it will still have to go to Parliament. But of course, you know, you've also seen the back and forth in the conflict of interest bill. So I want to confirm to you that we are not only proactive, but very, very innovative.
Interesting. Let's talk about some of this deterrent measures that have been put in place, because at times when you look at the consequences, it might be enough to tell you, hey, this is a hot issue, I shouldn't be able to try even forge my certificates. So talk to us about how the courts have made jurisprudence on this particular matter, on falsification of documents, because at times consequences are enough of a deterring factor. Prevention is better than cure, as they say. Equally, are there solutions that can be applied in the private sector as well? There's so much emphasis on the public sector, and I just quoted a report that highlighted the issues beleaguering the public sector. What about the private sector?
Yeah, so the private sector, EACC as currently constituted, except for issues of bribery, our main focus is on public officials as well as public property. But that does not stop us from working together with the private sector, because again, they are a very useful partner with government. So even for falsification of academic and professional certificates, of course, we would expect them that there are some of them when they recruit. First of all, they write to us to ask if certain candidates who have been shortlisted have been mentioned in any corruption or unethical practices, and we give them that information. But in terms of verification, we can give them the training, but we will also expect that as they recruit, they can also use their own initiatives to authenticate those certificates, because if somebody said they studied at University of Nairobi or Kenyatta University, like you had mentioned at the beginning, they just need to write and say, please tell us whether these documents are genuine or not. But maybe to the question that you started about the courts have made very, very useful jurisprudence, especially on this matter of academic certificates, which I mentioned at the beginning, that they have said that salaries earned as a result of use of forged academic certificates are amounts that are fraudulently acquired. Under the Anti-Corruption and Economic Crimes Act, Section 45(1), it says that a person is guilty if they fraudulently or unlawfully acquire public property. Salary is a public property. So the courts have said it does not matter. You may have worked for 10 years. You have rendered the service. But the courts are saying that employment was based on an illegality, and the courts cannot sanitize it, and therefore they have allowed us to recover those amounts. As we speak, we are in the process of instituting recoveries for about 480 million, just for the cases that we have so far handled.
Okay.
And the other big development, like I said, some of these cases are very easy. They are very straightforward. Most of the people we have charged in court are actually opting to plead guilty without even the case going to its logical conclusion. And they are saying, I want to plead guilty to these charges, and then I refund all the amount that I have had already earned. And towards that initiative, we have already realized about 14 million. Just people saying, I want to plead guilty and return the money. So for the ones that have not, we will continue we will file those suits, and so far we are at about 480 million.
Has there been a case of, let's say I forged my academic papers, got employment, then thereafter I had a Damascus moment and decided to go back to school? I've already gotten the employment, but I decide to authenticate my forged academic papers.
Yes.
So in such a case, do they return all the money during their term of employment, or it simply applies to that particular point until when you got your papers sorted out?
Actually, you bring a very, very interesting scenario, because what we have had is people who forged, let's say, Form 4 certificates. They had a C plane, and then they forged it to B plane and went and did a degree course. Did it very well and passed. I can assure you that that degree which you took 4 years to do is also invalid, because it is based on a forged foundation.
Okay.
So that is the pain that most of them have had to go, because in the first place you did not qualify to do this course.
Okay.
So even the one that you did becomes invalid. Now let's talk about the ones who see a Damascus moment. One, even for the ones who are pleading guilty, it will take you 10 years, because the law says once convicted of corruption, whether the case ran to its logical conclusion or you decided to plead guilty, you are barred from holding public office for 10 years. So you can wait for 10 years, go back to school, and then once you get the authentic qualifications, then you can now be considered having proved that you've been out for for at least 10 years. Yes, for 10 years.
For 10 years.
Yes.
Okay, are we looking at the same thing? Because when we look at university or institutions of higher learning, these certificates, and let's say that the forgery is suspected at that time, and because we're looking at the time that this takes to actually authenticate, number one, process, and then start to investigate, it's very possible that somebody may have the spotlight on them and decide that while you people are doing your investigations, they will actually go and do the degree
during investigation.
I mean, how would you stop them?
So these investigations on academic and professional qualifications, we are carrying out investigation to establish, one, if you have used the forged certificate for employment, for promotion, or designation. So we look at those three. You've used it to get employment, promotion, or redesignation. And that is where the offense is committed, that is where we will recover the amounts. Because we say that, let's say we are in May, you got employed in May of 2025, and then this investigation is done in 2028.
Yes.
So what the salary that we will have to recover is all that you've earned from May 2025 to the time now when, because what most of organizations are also doing, immediately they got this report from PAC, they started to ask some of these people to explain. A good number of them opted to resign, but that did not stop EACC from pursuing them because offenses had already been committed.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, if we look at somebody who is in the political sphere, political circles, you have 5 years. If you do run for re-election, maybe another 5 years thereafter, whatever the case may be. So are we saying that if you then do find that maybe somebody did present a forged certificate or gave false information about their time at an institution of higher learning, that even if their term has come to an end, that EACC would still go after them for those which they earned as a result of that initial forged certificate or question?
Correct. And the only rider is that certificate must have been a requirement for you, not even just in the political spheres. Even for in the public institutions, we have actually people who have forged certain certificates like Form 4, but they have not actually used them for promotion or maybe redesignation. So for those, we will charge them for forgery. But if you have used it for promotion, then we will have to charge you both for forgery and for fraudulent acquisition. So as long as it was a requirement, because we are saying were it not been for this certificate that you said you had this degree or you had this grade, you will not have gotten this position. Yes.
Apart from what would be perhaps perceived as the ambiguity of the law when it comes to some things, what would you say are some of the other matters or challenges that slow down the EACC in the application of its mandate?
So there is the issue of, other than the law, the gaps in the law, the other issue is resources. And resources affects us both in terms of the numbers as well as the operations. Because ideally under the new constitution, we are supposed to devolve our services to actually all the counties. But so far, we are only in certain towns. Like you will find, say, in Mombasa, you have an office in Mombasa, maybe in charge of 3 counties. You have another in Malindi. Most of our regional offices are in charge of 5 counties. We have very, very few officers. In certain counties, you have maybe 5 or 8 officers, and the number of reports are so many. In fact, these cases for forgeries and generally all cases of corruption, we will do much if we had the resources, both financial and the numbers. And of course, the cooperation from Kenyans. Yes.
All right.
Out of curiosity, do you retain any part of the recovered money as a body, EACC, to go into your budget operations and whatnot?
We wish we could. It happens in certain jurisdictions, and it's something that we are considering making proposals so that if the government agrees, then that can also help us to fund part of our operations. Yes.
I'm sure you've heard the word that has been used oftentimes when they say, toothless and not has enough strength as it would like. That when we look at other jurisdictions really quickly, that even if there is a whiff of any kind of behavior that would not be regarded in a public setting, that person or that individual is, number one, not given the job. Number two, put in the corner, say, sit over there first of all, let's deal with this issue before we give you an opportunity. Is there a time coming when the EACC will then be able to be that system which says, no, we will not stomach any kind of behavior that would look as though it was corrupt in any manner?
Yes, that is definitely the future we aspire to be, where we have the adequate resources, we have the adequate numbers, we have societal change in terms of even, condemning and not, coming out to defend corrupt deals when we have an enabling legislation. At that time, then we will say that, we are fully committed, because sometimes as EACC, we also get concerned that, you have gone to arrest a governor, and I'm not mentioning about the one that happened yesterday, even before.
Yes.
And then you have the residents coming to demonstrate, and yet the allegations that have been brought about this official is actually against them. Is theft of their own resources.
Indeed.
So it is like, either we have not been able to connect the dots that corruption actually affect socioeconomic development and service delivery, or there's a lot of despondency.
Indeed.
Yes.
FCPA John Lolkoloi is the Director, Ethics and Leadership at the EACC. There is a conference taking place tomorrow on ethics and leadership. Where is that happening again?
Yeah, so the Ethics and Integrity Conference is happening tomorrow at the New Stanley. And this conference, we conceptualized it when we were looking at these cases of forgery of academic and professional certificates for the last 1 year. And as a commission, we said that it was not enough. It's not enough just to investigate, arraign people in court, recover what they have stolen, issue advisories. It's important that we bring the conversation, bring the stakeholders, both in law enforcement, those that employ the education sector, the academia, so that we can come and ask ourselves, how did we come here? How did we come to the issue of having forged academic certificates, and what can we do to arrest the situation?
Thanks for sharing with us this morning and for being in the hot seat of the Situation Room. Asante Sana.
Thank you.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.